right, hello and welcome back. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker. And we are going through the Linux forensics room today that is inside of the digital forensics and incident response module of the SOC level 1 pathway of TryHackMe. And as you can tell, we're starting to make some decent progress, but we still got a long way to go in this module. And for today, it's going to be Linux forensics. If you are studying for your security analyst, cybersecurity analyst certification, pentest plus, ethical hacker, any of those things, please subscribe, like, turn on notification, drop a comment. All of those things, two things happen when you do that. Number one, the YouTube algorithm actually finds the channel and it can actually help us grow the community so that more people like you can find us and we can have a nice, beautiful, large community. But the more important thing that happens is that when you turn on that notification bell, you get notified when a video comes out in this path, or if we do videos inside the Pentest Plus path, because I do both of these paths as together. And so whether you're studying for your Pentest Plus or ethical hacker or security analyst, any of those things, these things actually directly apply to you in your studies, and it helps you with your examinations, obviously, and it also helps you with your career path in general, because you need to know how to do Linux forensics and everything of the sort. So I believe it's a win-win situation, but that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. And without further ado, let's jump into the introduction of the room. All right, the last two rooms were all around forensics on Windows machines, and because it's just a very, very common platform. So we're going to go into Linux. Linux is also a very common platform, and it's mostly done for web servers and things of the sort in large enterprise environments. But it's a very big deal to know both of these things. And I actually kind of like Linux more, mainly because it leans on the command line. And I don't know, man, there's something about the command line that makes you feel like a hacker. So it's one of those things that I guess it's like a personality preference, but it's whatever. In either case, we need to know both. If we're going to be security analysts, if we're going to be digital forensic specialists, incident responders, we need to be able to operate in both. And this room is going to be covering these various topics, and I think we're going to end up going a little bit further into some deeper topics as well. But that's kind of the intro of it. So what we're going to go through is just the Linux forensics, and then the rest of this stuff is all just command line stuff that we're going to run to complete the exercises and the questions. So let's jump into Linux forensics. The Linux operating system can be found in a lot of places. It may not be as easy to use as Windows or Mac OS, as they're saying. It has a lot of advantages that does make it pretty important, especially as we discussed in web servers. It could be, I guess, in smartphones as well, and the entertainment unit of cars. I didn't know about that. But it's pretty versatile, and it can do a lot of things. And I have gone through these various rooms, the fundamentals rooms for Linux. So I do recommend, if you haven't gone through those, to also go through those, because we're going to be going through some, I guess, more advanced commands. And it's just good to have your fundamentals. The distributions here, so the question basically at the bottom, it says, can you tell which distribution is represented by which logo? And so Ubuntu, you can't really tell. Red Hat, obviously, there's a Red Hat. Arch Linux, I'm going to say it's the one with the Arch. And obviously, I've pulled these things up in advance to kind of be able to just show you and confirm these things. OpenSUSE, it says it in the name, OpenSUSE, with this little chameleon. We have Linux Mint, so LM, which is what kind of that thing looks like. It's an LM. So we have Linux Mint, and then we have CentOS and Debian. Those are the what is it? The Arch Linux, the CentOS, and Debian are the ones that I actually really needed to pull up just to make sure. And so this is what Debian's logo looks like. This is what CentOS's logo looks like. And then we have the Arch Linux logo, because it's, an Arch. And then this is Ubuntu's logo. I also did not know that this was Ubuntu's logo. I've used Ubuntu machines a lot, so it's kind of surprising that I didn't know what the logo looks like, because I hadn't seen it up until now, really. But I think those are three people holding hands, basically. And so that's it. That's pretty much it. that's all the exciting information about that. And so that is it for the various Linux distributions inside of Linux Forensics. And so what we're going to be actually doing now is running forensics on a Linux machine, which is what's exciting. So we're going to go into pulling OS and account information. All right, so we basically have a virtual machine that I've already started. You just click the green start machine and it starts it up for you. Typically the Linux machine doesn't look like this. It's just a black screen with command line, and it doesn't have an OS type of interface with, you know, graphics and stuff like that. It's mostly command line. So it's nice that this particular Linux machine, it's an Ubuntu machine, so I'm not surprised that it actually has more of a graphic user interface. And really all we're going to be doing is just running these various commands that are inside of it just to pull various information from it. And so I'm just going to be in this window and I'll pull up the command line and we'll run through everything together. Let me just make sure I'm here. And then there's the 3 questions at the end that we got to answer. So it says, which 2 users are the members of the group audio? In the attached VM, there's a user account named TryHackMe. What is the UID of that account? And a session was started on this machine on Saturday, April 16th. How long did this session last? So we just need to pull that various information, and we're going to be using all of these different commands to do it. So I'm just going to be focused on the questions on this particular window. I have on my secondary monitor the actual commands that are pulled, and then from there we're just going to only work inside of our Linux machine. So I'm just going to open up command line here and we'll do this kind of a thing just to make it a little bit easier to look at it later. And I'll kind of keep this open like that, kind of do that, and then we just zoom in here, and it should be fairly easy to do from here on. So let's do the first set of commands, which is to find the OS release information. And so cat etc OS release, and that displays what's inside of this specific file for us. And so it says the name is Ubuntu, version, so on and so forth, ID is Ubuntu, pretty name is that, version ID, home URL, support URL, so on and so forth. That's basically it. So if you're trying to figure out what the release version of your specific OS is, you just do etc OS release. And very, very simple. Now there's a file that we used a lot in penetration testing, which is the password file, the etc password file. And we're just going to pull the 2 columns from here, the T and S columns, and it's going to give us, I mean, it's still giving us a lot of information, but you get to see some details about the users that are in here, as well. Mostly the users is what you're trying to find here, is that. So and I'll actually show you kind of what it looks like without those 2 TS parts. So etc password is basically this. I actually like this way more because it's kind of more condensed and you kind of know what you're looking at. But the previous command that we ran, it just split everything so that it's separated. You know, the X's were separated inside their own column instead of being separated by colons, so on and so forth. So there is something down here that reminds me of the question that is asking for TryHackMe's GUID, which is 1001. So we're going to go here and we're going to enter that, and that is a correct answer. Can we zoom out a little bit so we could see what's up? There we go. So that's the correct answer on this. So we're going to go back into our terminal here. And yeah, this is basically how you pull the user accounts to see what user accounts exist. There are no passwords here. That is inside of the shadow file. But we do get to see that there's the root user. And then at the bottom, typically after all of these other OS users, there are the users that have been created that can use the account. So for example, TryHackMe is a user that can use this OS. Most of these other things are OS users being used by the operating system that we typically don't want anything to do with, don't have much to do with. Whoopsie might be somebody that we can look into. I feel like that's also one of the OS usernames though. I think I saw it somewhere else. But yeah, so that's how you do the user accounts. You just go to etc password, and then we're going to use cat to read it, because more often than not you can't go into the file because it's restricted. So typically you can use cat to read it, even though you can't execute it or open it, things like that. In the documentation of this task, it's actually pointing out this particular user for us, which is the Ubuntu user that belongs to group 1000, and it has the user ID of 1000, and root has a UID of 0 with belonging to the group 0. So that first number is the UID. For TryHackMe, it's 1001, and then the second number ends up being the group ID. And then this X, the placeholder, is implying that the hash value of the password for all of these different user accounts is inside the shadow file. So it's basically all we need to know. There is also the home folder for this person and the location of their bash file and bash shell. And then now we can look at group information for these various accounts, or just general groups that exist on this machine. So the way that we do that is, again, cat and then etc group, and then that'll print the group information that we got. And so you have TryHackMe that belongs to 1001, and then we can just go and try to find various groups. So we have Ubuntu that belongs to 1000, SSH, the secure shell, which group it belongs to. You have the cron tab group, you have the system groups, the video group, and so on and so forth. And I think there's actually a question about groups, right? So it says which two users are the members of the group audio. So which two users are members of the group audio? So we can try to find that information probably inside the group information. And let's see what we can find here. So we just got to locate the group audio, which is right here. The password is obviously inside the shadow file. The group ID number is 29. And these are the two users that belong to it. So Ubuntu, as you can see, Ubuntu belongs to a lot of groups. And so we have Ubuntu and Pulse that belong to the audio group. So we can go right here and we can do Ubuntu and Pulse. And there is that answer. And that's it. That's kind of very simple, that we can pull the group information like this. And now we're going to try to find login information. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to look at the sudoers list. So the group of people that can access sudo. And for that, we actually need to use sudo, which is essentially saying run this with admin command or root command, root permissions, excuse me. And so we're looking at the etc sudoers list, and this is the list right here in its entirety. And we can see that, who do we have as our sudoers? We have admin, and we have sudo, and we have root, and that's pretty much it. That's all we got over here. Let's see, Ubuntu is not located in this thing at all. So Ubuntu is not a part of the sudoers list. And what they're saying in the documentation is that that's actually really it. They don't really say much in regards to this. They just say that Linux allows us to see users who have elevated privileges to sudo, and it's inside the sudoers list, which is what we're looking at. And the list is stored in the directory that we're in, and we can use cat to read it. And you'll need elevated privileges, which is why we ran sudo cat instead of just running cat. And that's pretty much it. That's all we got for the documentation for the sudoers list. The next one is going to be login information. And so in the var log directory, there's something, there's several files that are wtmp, btmp, and btmp saves information about the failed logins, and wtmp keeps the historical data of logins. So you can look at both of those things because they are actually very useful. You can see how many people tried to log in but failed, and then how many people actually successfully logged in. And so these files are not regular text files that can be read using cat, less, or vim. And cat, as you see, just displays it. Vim is a text editor. Less is similar to cat. It just displays, I think, the top portion of the screen, or maybe less information. I forget what less does, but it displays it more on the screen. And then Vim goes inside the file. And these are binary files, the BTMP and WTMP, which have to be read using the last utility. So we can go to the manual page for last if we wanted to see what last does. And this is basically what it does. And searches back through the WTMP file and displays a list of all users logged in. One or more usernames and or TTYS can be given, which in which case will show only the entries matching those specific arguments. And that's kind of it. These are the options right here. So A would be the last host, D would be DNS, F for file, and capital F for bring the full login and logout times and dates, and then I would be for IP address, and then number, etc. So these are it's a variety of things. I'm not going to go through all of this entire list right here because it is an extensive list. And so we can just press Q to quit. And now what we're going to do is read the login file. So it's going to be fvar log and WTMP. And we're just going to read that, and it gives us all of the successful logins. And so we have for system reboot, and then it just shows you who's actually logged in and what's running, right? So that's kind of the situation here. Does not give us the detailed information of who the users are, and that's something that I would want to see. I feel like it should be something that shows us. So reboot, maybe system is it, and then it's just a boot, and this is the info right here. These two are still running. That one seems to have been ran, and I think there's a question that's associated with this that says session was started on this machine on Saturday, April 16th at 2010. And how long did that last? And this is the session that they're referring to. And it lasted 01:32. Can we copy this? We can copy it. Excellent. So we can just take that and drop that here. And that is our answer for this. Yep. Okay, very good. All right. So here we go. And let's move on to the next set of commands. That's actually it for all of the questions that we have to answer, but there is one more set of commands that we need to look at, which is through the authentication logs. So the every user that authenticates on a Linux host is logged in the auth log, the authentication log, and the auth log is a file placed in var log auth.log, and it can be read using the cat utility. However, given the size of the file, we will use tailhead more or less to make it a little bit easier to read, because apparently it's a really large file. So var log and then auth.log, and then so we're just going to look at the tail portion of it, meaning the end of it, and this is kind of what it looks like in the end of this file. Let me see if I just zoom out a little bit more, just so we have the full thing. And this is it. So what it says is that we can see that the user Ubuntu elevator privileges on March 19th, or well, not in our display, but in the example display. So I will give you the example display because it gives you some more information about this. And so it works like this. So we can see that the user Ubuntu elevator privileges on March 19th using sudo to run the command etc sudoers, and then we can see the subsequent session open and closed events for the root user, which were a result of the above mentioned privilege escalation. So on March 29th, which is right here, we can see where is it? March 29th. This is all March 29th. So what we have is sudo, and then we have sudo Ubuntu, and that's kind of it. All of this is being run through the TryHackMe user, and then error executing command Ubuntu. So this was a thing that is trying to run, I think, pk execute, and that one didn't work for him. So, and then dbus daemon system failed to activate service org blues, and then you have the cron job, which we're going to look at in a little bit, And then there's the sudo Ubuntu that tried to look at, let's see, the user at etc sudoers, and then immediately session opened for root user and session closed for root user. So these are the three specific commands that we're more interested in. And so TryHackMe sudo Ubuntu time to something. I forget. No, actually, that's not time to something. I forget what this acronym stands for. The password or print working directory, excuse me, print working directory was home Ubuntu. The user was root, and the command was user bin cat and etc sudoers. So he tried to just cat the etc sudoers. It doesn't show it like this. It shows the full command that was executed. And so if we went over here, we would probably also see, oh, I mean, it's literally has the same thing for us. It's just on a different date for us. But it's pretty much the same information on the screen. So print working directory, the user root command was user bin last f yada yada yada, and this is what we just did previously. So it's showing us our last command. Look at that. It's showing us this specific command that was ran, and then after that session opened for user root, and then session closed for user root because we ran a sudo command. And yeah, that's kind of the way that it looks like when you look at the authentication log. So it's important. It's totally different, as you can see. It's not even remotely close to what the Windows logs look like, because the Windows logs come through a user graphic interface and they're just way more user friendly. So there's it's like a hit and miss. I just like being inside the command line. There's just something about being inside the command line that's very, very attractive to me. So whatever, that's neither here nor there. We are going to now move on to the next task, which is system configuration. All right, so once we've identified the OS and account information, we can start looking into the system configuration of the host. And we're going to be doing all of these commands that help us do that. And from there, we're going to look at the answers for these questions. So what is the host name of the attached machine? The time zone of the attached machine, what program is listening on this IP address? What is the full path of that program? And read about the flags above with the netstat and ps commands in their respective manual pages. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So the host name of the machine, the time zone of the machine, what program is listening on the local host, which is what 127.0.0.1, that's what that is. It's just on port 5901. And then what is the full path of the program, and so on and so forth. So let's go into that and let's answer some of those questions here. So the first specific command that we are running is to pull the host name, which I think we should already have, but we're just going to run it in a more, okay, here we go. So let's do a clear screen here. And we're going to run cat etc hostname. Very simple. And just like that, it says Linux 4 and 6. That is our host name. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to go here and paste that, and that is our answer. The next one is the time zone. So we're going to go cat etc time zone, and there is the time zone that we're in. So Asia, Karachi is the time zone that we're in. And what program is listening on the address 127? So that one is probably going to be in a little bit of a different command. But okay, so we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. The next command that we're supposed to run is to check the network configuration. So that's going to be inside the network interfaces. So cat etc network interfaces, and there is that. And we don't have too much. The one that we got from the example gives us a little bit more information, but it seems to be that we don't have much over here. So the file used by IFUP and so IF up and IF down, meaning interface up and interface down, includes files from the network interfaces, and source directory is etc network interfaces. And that's pretty much all we got for that. The documentation says that we can run this. The output might be different from what we've shown here, which is exactly true. They have some more info where it says, similarly, to find information about the MAC and IP addresses of the different interfaces, we can use the IP utility. To learn more about the IP utility, we can see the manual page. Below terminal, I'm going to run the command basically, but it's IP address show. So IP address show will show us our current IP addresses. And so you can see that the local machine, so LO stands for local machine, has the 127.0.0.1, which is what we saw in that example. It just doesn't show us what services are running on that port that they were referring to. And then ETH0 has this specific IP address, and this is the IP address of our Linux machine that we're on. So every machine, for the most part, whether it's Linux, I think even Windows runs the same way, where it has this local IP address, 127.0.0.1. It applies to pretty much every machine. But then there is the actual IP address that is being used if I wanted to scan this machine, or if I wanted to access this machine from a different machine. I would use this IP address to secure shell into it, or remote desktop into a Windows machine. You would use this. You don't use the local machine address because it's literally the same thing for every machine. So it's like it won't work. So you need this thing. And then this is the incoming, and then it also has a broadcast IP address that it doesn't show me here. I want to say that this is the broadcast IP address. No, this is the subnet that we're on. So the 255.255 implies which subnet we're on. This is our Ethernet MAC address, and then we have INET 6, which is our IP version 6 IP address, which is this thing. So you can see the IPv4, IP version 4 address. This is our IPv6 address, and this is the MAC address of the Ethernet that we have for our specific machine. So that's what IP address shows. If we wanted to just see the manual for IP, we could also just run it and see what's going on. And it seems to be, so there is more options here. So it says IP option, object, etc. And these are all the objects that could be accessed, and these are all the options that could be accessed. And so we looked at the address, and then show. It was basically a command. I don't think show is even in this list of commands. But we were looking at IP address. Oh, show is up here. So there you go. So show, manipulate routing, network devices, etc., etc. So it's IP show, and then you can just do IP address show, IP mroute show, IP monitor show, etc. You have the -V that would give us version, human readable, batch things, force meaning don't terminate IP on errors, stats, details, loops, family, a lot of things that you can run, and there's still a bunch more information. So feel free to browse through that as you're going through it. I am going to move on to our next series of commands in the interest of time. What we need to now do is look at our active network connections, and we're going to be doing that through netstat, which is a utility that's used to find active network connections on a Linux host. So this is actually very, very useful, and we're going to be using a variety of specific options for this. So to be able to see what our options are, and I'm going to just read the ones that we're going to be using in our next specific command. So you go through the options and the description for these options. So first we have, the list of them are NATP is what we're going to be looking at. So N would be numeric, show numerical addresses instead of trying to determine symbolic host, port, or usernames. NATP, so let's see. It's a lowercase a, so I want to say that it's not this protocol family option. Let us go. P is the program, show the PID of the program. A would be show both listening and non-listening sockets, so A is for all. And NATP, where's T? Okay, so it's in the upper section of this whole thing. So T is for TCP. So NATP, so N is numeric, A is for everything, P is for the process ID, T is going to be for the TCP connections, and then you could be U for UDP connections, and so on and so forth. So now let's actually run the command just so we can see what we have access to, NATP. And here we go. And here it is. So 5901, this is the question in our task that we need to answer. And it's asking for the PID and the program name. And so that's the PID and the program name. I'm just going to copy the full thing. And we're going to see, we're just going to delete that part. And that's going to be the program that's listening. So what is the full path of that program? Now that's what we got to find. And I think we could do locate and then do, I'll just paste it. Can I not paste it? And let's do this. If I do locate, it doesn't find it. So I will just copy this one more time and we'll go through a series of commands. So it's find here, name, and we're going to paste, and to dev null to avoid all the errors. Let's see if we can find that thing. Okay, there it is. That is the full path of the file in question. And let's go here and drop that, and there it is. And this is actually a super useful command. This is a Linux command. I think there's a Windows version of it as well, but this is a Linux version of this command that we do find. This specific / implies that I want you to search everything inside of this entire machine. So if I wanted to just search inside of the user directory, I would say find / user, meaning I want you to search inside of the user directory, and then search for the name, yada yada yada, xtigervnc, and then to dev null just means don't show me any of the error messages, because usually when you do this, it either says you don't have permission to certain things, or there's just several types of error messages that can come up, and it fills up the screen and it takes up this entire space, and you don't want that. So you just want to be able to only see the things that directly apply to the search parameters that we gave. And so we're looking for that specific thing, and we're looking by its name, and we're going to search inside of the entire machine. So we do that. So if I just did this, just so you kind of see what's going on, if I did inside of the user and I went and did xtigervnc and then to come on, dev null, and it would do the same thing, and it gives me the same result because it's searching inside of user bin, right? And that's kind of, and I'm not gonna get carried away with this because I'm pretty sure we're gonna try to run other commands that might be similar to this. So we'll come back and we'll do that later. But this is it. This is actually everything that we ran for this specific task. We didn't have to answer any more questions. So what we're gonna do is just gonna do the rest of the processes here, or the rest of the commands, excuse me. And so let me just clear this up. So we're at the top of the page now. And so what do we got? We got, let's search for processes. Okay, so now we can run, search for running processes, and that's using the ps command. So if I do ps aux, look at all these things that are running. So this could have also shown us the specific file that would be currently running, and it would have given us the full path of that running process. And let's see if we can find it, because I know it's inside user bin and user bin python 3, user bin. But see, this is, you see, this is how much, just like much larger output. And you got to now search through all this crap. And if you can grep, you can grep. So maybe we could do that. So instead of doing all this, so I could do ps aux, and I could do grep for, what was it, xtigervnc, I think it was. No. Let me see what's the name of the thing that I was supposed to search for. Let's go back here. It is xtigervnc. So I guess I didn't even use grep, dude. ps aux grep x tiger vnc. There you go. There it is. And so we have the user bin x tiger vnc. So grep is a search command. So you run this command and you pipe it into grep, and it allows you to search for whatever inside of the output of that command. And in our particular case, we wanted the full path of this, so we could have done this. And this is another way to get the same exact result as the find command that gave us this. And one of the hints right here was to use the ps-aux command to view running processes. You can grep the required process name. Please note that the process names are case sensitive. So I used find. So now you have two versions of finding a process name or the path of a process name, and that is either by using grep from the ps-aux, or you can just search find. You can look, you can use find and search for it by its name. So that was the processes, to run through the running processes. And now we're going to look for the DNS information, which is going to be inside the etc host file. So let's clear the screen here, and we're going to go to cat etc hosts, and there's that. There's also a manual page for hosts that can tell us more about what we can search for by using hosts as a command itself. But this is kind of the output of what we just want to look at. And so when we ran the IP address show, it showed us that 127.0.0.1 was the local host, and now these are our different DNS resolutions. I think it's what it's called. But these are our resolved DNSs, and that's kind of it. So FE00, FF00, so on and so forth, IP6, local net, MCAST, all nodes, all routers, all hosts, and that's pretty much it. If I ran through man hosts, just so we can see what's going on here, the synopsis is that it's inside of the etc hosts, and this manual page is yada yada yada. It's a simple text file that's associated IP address with host names, one line per IP address. The options are, let's see. Oh, there is no options really. It just kind of shows you what various examples of the output might look like. And you have some historical notes, you have the file that's associated with it, and you can kind of see what some of these things are previously used for or currently used for. So we can get out of that now and clear this up and go into the next piece. And I think this still has to do with DNSs. So it says the information about DNS servers that a Linux host talks to for a resolution is stored in the resolve configuration file. Okay, there we go. So we can look at the configuration file of the DNSs that were resolved. So etc resolve.conf for configuration, and this is what we got. There we go. So the name server is 127.0.0.5.3, options EDNS 0 trust AD, search US computer internal, and these are all of the DNSs that have been resolved for us specifically. So not much to see since this is just a small virtual machine, but that can show you more information about if there were specific IPs that were either spoofed, or domain names that were spoofed, or if there's anything running that shouldn't be running, meaning if there's anything connected that shouldn't be connected, and that's kind of it. That should be it for our current set of commands, which that is right. So DNS information was the last one. So we are wrapped for system configuration, and now we're going to move to the next one. It does say read about the flags above with the netstat and ps commands in their respective manual pages, which we did. So I am happy about that. We actually did look at the flags that were used in netstat, the NATP flags that we used, and the ps-aux, and all of that stuff. So now we can move on to persistence mechanisms. All right, so persistence mechanisms, cron jobs, we talked about it in a previous video, and we've actually maintained persistence on Linux machines using cron jobs and the cron tab file. And cron jobs and cron tabs, as you can see here, are basically the scheduled tasks, and they run at certain intervals. And this thing right here, and this is just such a clean output. It never looks like this when I when I run this command. It never actually looks like this. But so it says, this is the number. So this is the ID or the number that's attached to whatever the cron job is. The first specific asterisk applies to the minute that it's supposed to be running on. So if there is no value here, that means it's running every minute. If there is a value, that means it runs every 6 minutes. The next one is the hour. So every hour that it's supposed to be running. So hour and 6 minutes, I guess, is how long it would run. And then the next asterisk implies to the day of the month that it would run. And then the month itself, and then the day of the week that it would run. And so this last thing is running every 7 days, every 6 minutes, every 7 days, I guess. I think that's what that's supposed to mean. But it kind of gives you the schedule of these things running. And then usually when you're trying to maintain persistence, or when you're trying to catch somebody who's trying to maintain persistence, you would look at something that is running every minute, because these are cron jobs that run regularly. And if they're created by the user root, that means they're running under root permissions. And so if somebody comes and modifies this thing, and any of these things really, if somebody comes and modifies that with a script to get a reverse shell, and it runs every freaking minute, then there's issues, because you know that these mofos they have a reverse shell running on the other side of this thing, and they have some kind of a C2 server or some kind of remote shell that's getting access to the system. So cron jobs and cron tabs are actually a big deal. This is one of those big things, and there's a lot of times that a developer, like a security analyst or system admin, will create a script, and then they'll attach a scheduled task to it so that it can run that script regularly. And then when they're done with the system, they'll delete the script, but they won't delete the cron job that was associated with it, the scheduled task that was associated with it. And that's another one of those things that it's like the sweet spot for a hacker, because that cron job has a root permission attached to it, even though the specific file may no longer exist. But if they can find that there's a scheduled task that's been attached to this, they can just go recreate this file and put it in the same exact directory. And now it's going to be running every single minute with root permissions, and they can put whatever they want in it. For example, a script to create a reverse shell to their stuff. So very, very important to look at cron jobs. And then we have the services that have been set up under init, and then we have the bash commands that can be stored inside this thing. So we're just going to go look at all of this stuff inside our machine and see if there's anything unique about our machine in this particular case, which might or might not be the actual case. So let's see what we got here. Okay, the first command is the etc cron tab. So cat etc cron tab. Wow, this is actually very organized. It usually does not look like this. Maybe it's because I don't have a big enough window or something when I ran this, but you can see it pretty much looks exactly the same. It does look exactly the same as what we just looked at. So I'm not gonna dive too much deeper into this, because you already see what's going on. And we can see where our shell path is. We can see what our path variable looks like and what's inside our path variable, which is another thing that's useful for an attacker to manipulate. If they know what the path variable is, and if the path variable is accessible from lower privileged users, they might be able to use it to run a shell or run some kind of exploit. So that's pretty much it. I'm not going to dive too much deeper into this. We are going to go into the next one, which is going to be the service startup. So the service startup can be looked at by using ls instead of cat, and it is the initd. So it's inside etc and it's initd, and ls is a command for list. The Windows version is dir, dir. and it just basically lists everything that's inside that specific directory. And so you can see all of these things that are inside the directory, and these are all services that should be running. So OpenVPN is in here, SSH is in here, networking is in here, and I think these are all further directories. So if I do ls etc init d and then do OpenVPN, I think that's another directory. And oh no, maybe not. Okay, so it seems like that might just be a file. But yeah, it shows everything that's inside of that specific directory. Services can be set up in Linux, and they'll start and run in the background after every system boot. And this is what we're looking at. And these are our specific services. And you just run ls to see what's inside it. The next one that we're going to look at is the bash rc. So when a bash shell is started up, it runs the commands that are stored inside the bash rc file. And this can be considered a startup list of actions to be performed for a bash shell. So it can be a good place to look for persistence, meaning somebody modified that specific file. So we're going to look at cat. It's going to be inside the root bash rc. And then this is what it looks like in here. And so all of these, this is anything that's not been commented out. So you see these hashtags, these are commented out. So this is non-applicable. But anything that's not commented out, that means that this is an actual live script that's running. And so you should be analyzing this, and you should look for funky IP addresses or port numbers or some kind of weird executable that might be running or should be running or anything like that. So it's a good place to look for things because, you know, Linux admins use bash all the time. What we're in right now, this entire thing is bash. The command line, the terminal is bash. It's running bash scripts. And so these are all of the things that are running when you open up a new terminal. All of these things happen. And so when this is happening, this is just a great place for somebody to just dump some small script that can connect to some kind of a server or just run some things that might be typically what I would be really concerned with is trying to find something that is running a connection to an IP address, so you can kind of check for that and you can actually see if there's any kind of an IP address that's listed in here. And this is a healthy bash file, so you can see that there's no IP addresses that are in this. But IP addresses, port numbers, anything like that is an immediate red flag that would be inside of this bash rc file, and that would be something that you would definitely want to look into further. The system-wide settings are stored in etc/bash.bashrc and the etc profile files, so it's a good idea to take a look at those files as well. And so our question says, in the bash rc file, the size of the history file is defined. So what is the size of the history file that is set for the user Ubuntu in our machine? So let's go back into our last command. We just press up and we find it, and that's what it is. And so what we want to do is we want to find the history file and then the size of the history file. So I just ran a basic, I clicked on search up here and I ran a search for the word history, and it shows up in two places. And in the bottom of the page, it's inside an actual command, but this is the variable that is, it's giving us two. So it's the history size is 1000 and the history file size is 2000. And what they're asking for is the history file size. So it's going to be 2000 is going to be our answer. Let me zoom out and go right here. 2000. There we go. Okay, very good. And just like that, we got our persistence mechanisms gone and done. So now we're going to move on to the evidence of execution. See what they executed. Can we find evidence with what was executed? Let's move on. All right, so there is sudo execution history, meaning what was executed under the user permission for sudo. All the commands that are run using sudo are stored in the authentication log, which we've already kind of looked at. So we can go ahead and search for that. And then there's the bash history. Any commands other than the ones run using sudo are stored in the bash history. Every user's bash history is stored separately in the user's home folder, so we can always look at that. There's files accessed using the Vim editor. It's a text editor. We can see all of that. And so the questions right here are: the user TryHackMe used apt-get to install a package. What was the command that was used? And then what was the current working directory when the command to install nettools was issued? They kind of gave it away, so I'm guessing that's what the person tried to install here. But so let's see. So these are the only two. The TryHackMe install the package. What was the command that was used? That was the full command. And then what is the current working directory for nettools? So bash history for TryHackMe, and then auth log. Okay, so the first one is the sudo for sudo execution history, which would be varlog auth.log, and then we're gonna grab for the command and look for the tail portion of this whole thing, I guess. These are all of the things that have been run by sudo as the instructions imply. From here, I know that this is one of the questions told us to come look inside of this to try to find the nettools execution, but for some reason I don't see it. So if I search for nettools, it's not here. Okay, so we have to try to find that at some point. The next one is bash history that we need to pull up, and it says that the user TryHackMe used apt-get to install a package. What was the command that was used? And that is inside his bash history, or their bash history. We'll just say that. So what we need to do is figure out where we are right now, and it's home Ubuntu. So if we went back one and we list it here, that's TryHackMe. So we're going to go inside of that, and we're going to list LA and give me bash history. There's bash history. So now I want to look inside of their bash history to see where what they did. So we're going to do cat, I think it's this, bash history, like so. No such file or directory, but there is a file or directory. So what if I do cat like this, bash history? Huh, so cat. Okay, so this seems to be it, although I feel like this is the full list of everybody, but let's see. Okay, so what we're trying to do is sudo apt install nettools. Somebody did that. So whoever did that was sudo apt-get install nettools. This is the command. I want to say that's the full command. So we're going to copy this and go down here and see if this is the answer. Got it. So when we ran the previous command that had the little squiggly line in the beginning of it, so I'll show you what that is. Let me actually just clear the screen and then we'll restart this from the beginning. So previously what I did was I ran the command, which was essentially cat, and then it had this thing at the beginning of it, and then it was bash history, and this is the sudo bash history. So this is not the user TryHackMe's bash history, and it's mainly because we had that squiggly at the beginning, meaning that was like the super root, the root home folder, and then it was looking at the bash history of root. So what we needed to do was, inside of the current directory that we're at, we do have a bash history inside of TryHackMe's home directory, and I was trying to run it using cat, and it would give me a permission denied error, but I have to do sudo. So sudo cat bash history would actually print it out for me, and it's right there. And so he's actually installing Apache 2. And so that's the reason why we could not find this specific thing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this thing and we're going to copy this, and that is going to be our answer. So they were not installing NetTools, they were installing Apache 2. So now we want to try to find the directory where NetTools was issued. Okay, so the machine actually timed out on me, so I needed to restart it, and I think all of the commands actually ended up kind of disappearing, like the main series of commands. And so this is all that's left from the authentication log of the commands that were ran. And after kind of, I guess, going back and forth a few times, because the history for this thing, for this particular user, is the only thing that actually shows us the NetTools. And every time I try to search for NetTools, it doesn't show me anything inside the authentication log, which is what the hint is telling us to do. The hint is telling us to search for this, for NetTools inside the authentication log. But then when you look at the actual authentication log, it doesn't show you anything that has to do with NetTools. It does give us a current working directory, which is what they gave us. They say PWD for print working directory, but this is the current working directory that's inside the authentication log. And so that's really the only thing that I can think of might be the answer, which is home Ubuntu. And it is the answer. So it's just the hint was a little bit confusing, and I was trying to kind of go based on what the hint actually said. So it says check the auth log. You can grep command and NetTools. And you can technically do that, but nothing actually prints out for NetTools. So that part's kind of confusing. And yeah, just so in case you run across something like that, I feel like that would be a helpful piece of information to know to save you some time. So now we're going to move into log files, and then we're going to wrap this room up. So let's go into log files. Okay, log files, syslog, authentication log, which we've looked at multiple times, third-party logs, and the question is, though the machine's current hostname is the one we identified in task 4, the machine earlier had a different hostname. What was the previous hostname of the machine? And the hint, just in case, says check syslog. You can grep hostname to shortlist the logs of your interest. Check what other hostname was present in the syslog apart from the current one. You can use syslog asterisk to include syslogs that have been rotated into your search. So hopefully that hint doesn't drive us down the wrong path here. But let's get into it and wrap this up. So from what we understand is that the logs are typically located inside the verilog directory. And so here are all of the logs. And from here, we can kind of try to go through some of the common ones that they gave us. And there are that syslog asterisk command that they gave us in the hint was because there are actually 3 versions of syslog right here. So syslog 1, 2. So let's just kind of go through the very first one. So it says cat var log. I don't even need to do all that because I'm inside the place. So I can do syslog, and then I can do that and just give us everything that was in here. And so this is what we got right here. And some interesting information. If you like looking at log files, you would find this interesting. Listening on the GNU PG network certificate, cryptographic agent, and passphrase, etc., etc. If I just run that and don't use the head, it'll give us definitely much more information. Look at all this stuff. Isn't that lovely? Can you even tell what the hell's going on? I can't. So we're going to clear that up. The one that we're looking for specifically, though, is going to be the cat syslog, and then we want to grep hostname from it. So let's see what we can get from here. And so we got a few different things right here. So Linux 4 and 6 is currently the one that I think we just found. Linux 4 and 6, the hostname was changed from none to Linux 4 and 6. So I guess previously it was hostname D maybe. Hostname D could be it. freedesk hostname 1 could be it. Hostname 1 could be it. So either hostname D or hostname 1, it seems like. Or it could just be none, I guess. That could definitely be an answer. But hostname 1 seems to be the big or the common thing that comes. It says using hostname D. So that could be it. And changed from none to TryHackMe. That's another thing. So it could be changed from none to TryHackMe. Could be hostname D. So let's see what we can find, or let's see what we can use. We'll do TryHackMe first. Okay, that is the right answer. So it was previously changed to TryHackMe, and then it was then changed to Linux something something something, Linux 4 and 6. So there is that answer, and we don't really need any more answers here. We can just freely run the rest of our commands and search through our logs. So the syslog contains messages that are recorded by the host about system activity. The detail which is recorded in these messages and configurable through the logging level. We can use the cat command to look at it, and it's inside the var log directory, and it's a huge file. It's easier to use tailhead more or less to make it more readable. So we did all of that stuff. And now we can look at the next one, which is the authentication log. So it would be the auth log, and that also has 3 different versions of it. So that's why we do something like the asterisk at the end of it, so we can include all of them, and then just look at the, I guess, the top portion of it. And this is what this looks like. We've already looked at the auth log multiple times. So this is kind of I guess a review for everything that we just did. And in this particular case, you see what something's been going on in this situation. And it doesn't show only the sudo commands that have been run. It kind of shows a little bit of everything, which is nice. I don't know specifically why last time it only showed us the sudo. I think it was because we did maybe the grep for command or something. That might have been the case. So if I do that, so if I do grep and I, maybe it was also the I flag that we put into it that it does not show. So what does it say? Binary file standard input matches nothing. Nothing shows up running through all of the authentication logs. So that is it for the authentication logs. We've already discussed it in the past, and it contains information about users and authentication related logs, and that's pretty much it. In our case, it didn't really have much to look, so it wasn't that great. It just said, session closed for root, closed for Ubuntu, closed for Ubuntu, closed for root, closed for Ubuntu. Kind of just seems to be, and these are cron session, soon session, sudo session, run user, L session, more cron session, light DM greeter session, used open for light DM by UID root, new session. So just a bunch of session creation and session ending commands, which is pretty standard. It seems like nothing crazy. Okay, so now we're going to look at, it says so there's third-party logs inside of the var log directory, which we're already in, and we can look at a lot of these things that have been created by third-party software. So for example, OpenVPN is a third-party software that would create a log, and in this case it has its own directory for logs. So if we go in there and list that, there's nothing in here apparently. Let's see. Yeah, there's nothing in there really. So it's just there's light DM that was also there. There seems to be, is there something for Apache? Because in the example it says that there is something for Apache, but we don't have one for Apache. We do have one for Amazon, so we can go into Amazon and see if there's anything in here. And there's an SSM directory. Let's see what's in there. There we go. We got a couple of logs in here. So Amazon SSM agent, the errors log, the Hibernate log. There's also a audits directory that we can go into, and permission is denied. So let me sudo into that mofo, and sudo cd audits command not found. Really? Isn't that interesting? Okay, well, let's not get distracted. And so these are some of our third-party logs, as we can see over here, right? So there's Amazon, obviously, third-party log. OpenVPN would be third-party. I think LightDM is also third-party. There is, what else that we can find? Probably Samba is a third-party. And Cups might be, not sure. I think Cups is actually, it comes with the system. So I'm guessing at this point. I'm guessing. I know that Amazon is a third party and OpenVPN is a third party, but the rest of them I would kind of be guessing as to whether or not they are third party logs. But so everything is inside the log directory. That's what we kind of are taking away from this particular portion of this task, which says that there's third party logs, and that's basically what this whole thing is. And it says, you know, to go inside it, or at least to list what's inside it. And then you can see that there's a bunch of things in here. And in their particular situation, they had something for Apache. So they were able to actually go into that directory, and they found access error and other vhost access logs. So if any database server like MySQL is installed on the system, we can also find that information on here. And that's pretty much it for this task. So we are actually wrapped with the log files, and now we can go into our conclusion, which includes a very nice little cheat sheet for us. So there's the wrap for the room. I already downloaded this cheat sheet because I genuinely love the cheat sheets that they make. Everything that we discussed in this place is inside of this cheat sheet. So it actually shows you system and OS information, run this, or this is where it's located. And then this is where the user accounts are located, the groups and sudoers and all of this stuff. So everything that we just went through is inside of this cheat sheet, which is freaking amazing. And I highly recommend that you get yourself a copy of it as well. I will probably at some point, I'm just going to create a Google Drive on my Gmail, and I'm just going to share all of this stuff with you. But I think you should just do it. I think you should get yourself a membership with TryHackMe so that you can go ahead and do all of the rooms and obviously get access to all the resources that they give you. But it's just it's very useful. It's super useful to be able to have a controlled environment where you can do all of these activities and hacktivities and hack into machines and do all those things. So I think it's very, very useful, and that's just my humble opinion. There's obviously going to be a link in the description below for TryHackMe if you want to register for that, so definitely check it out. All right, if you found any value inside of this video, and if you learned anything, or if you want to just get more access to more videos, because we're going to be going down this path. So the next one is going to be Autopsy, which is a specific tool for digital forensics, and then Redline and Cape and all of these things that are included just in the digital forensics situation. So definitely like, subscribe, turn on notification bell, drop a comment. All those things help us with the YouTube algorithm. But of course, if you turn on the notification, you actually get notified the next time a video comes out in this specific path or every other path that we run. So we're just currently on the SOC level 1 pathway, and we have done all of these things so far, and we're just going to continue to keep going forward. And then we're going to wrap it up at the very end with the phishing modules, which is always fun. So definitely like, subscribe, turn on notification bell, and drop a comment just to say hi, or if you learned anything, or if you have any questions, and so on and so forth. This is your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker. And if no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Peace, love, and chicken grease, and I will see you in the next video. See, these are all the videos that exist on the channel right now, and there is currently 76 videos that are live, and it's just going to be coming out more and more and more. So follow along and join the community. It would be amazing to have you. I would love to have you as a part of the community. So again, peace, love, and chicken grease. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. I'll see you in the next video. Later.